The global zero-emission heavy-duty vehicle segment, including battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, is already, today, helping power a dynamic and growing transport sector. Efficient, productive, and powerful zero-emission vehicles are quietly and cleanly collecting refuse, doing home deliveries, and running freight, all while making the air we breathe cleaner and reducing noise pollution. Fleets are setting ambitious goals, increasingly confident the hundreds of zero-emission models available around the world can meet their needs now. Building on progress in buses and vans, manufacturers are expanding their offerings, with a staggering growth in products coming to market. But we must move faster. What will it take to accelerate zero-emission truck adoption? To transform the biggest polluters on the road into tools critical to achieving global net zero emissions by 2050. What will it take to secure net zero, to limit warming to no more than 1.5 degrees? It takes working together to accelerate climate action. Leading nations from around the globe are now on a pathway to zero-emission transport, signaling a turning point. Their goal, our goal, to reach 30% zero-emission truck and bus sales by 2030 and 100% zero-emission sales and manufacturing by 2040. Recognizing the alarming trajectory of climate pollution from on-road freight, nations today are committing to bring transport emissions in line with Paris Agreement ambitions via a global agreement on zero-emission trucks and buses, a new memorandum of understanding across nations and supported by subnational governments, manufacturers, and fleets. This agreement will help put the world on the path to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Together, we will slash climate emissions from road freight, deliver cleaner air to the communities most in need, invest locally and drive innovative financing tools, create good-paying jobs with a strong future, and improve energy security in adopting nations. This is a global effort, backed by both government and the private sector. The transition to zero-emission road freight will be felt worldwide, benefiting communities and countries as they move toward a more sustainable world. We can't wait. The time has come to drive to zero.
Wow, look at how far we have come, everyone. We are ready to accelerate to a zero-emission transportation future. Did you see those beautiful trucks? Can you believe it? Zero emission. My name is Alycia Gilde, and I'm a senior director at CALSTART, a nonprofit organization focused on clean transportation, and I oversee our Clean Fuels and Infrastructure Initiative. And I am joined by our Global Drive to Zero team, which is led by Cristiano Facagna, our friend Peter Jenkins, Owen McDonnell, and of course, Bill Van Amberg. And I am honored to be the moderator for this afternoon's discussion. It's been a big day for Transport Day. 15 countries have signed the Global Memorandum of Understanding for zero-emission trucks and buses, committing to 30% new commercial vehicle purchases by 2030 and 100% by 2040. For sure, this COP is kickstarting the mass market for zero-emission vehicles. As you have just seen, there are medium and heavy-duty battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles that are already today helping to power a dynamic transportation future. But how do we move fast enough to slow down the threat of climate change and get on the pathway to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050? This afternoon, we are going to focus attention on decarbonization of the road freight sector. The movement of freight is vital to our global economy, and it is a significant contributor of greenhouse gas emissions and local air pollution. Freight has received limited global attention on the opportunities that are available for zero-emission freight. But again, just as you've seen up there, we have Class 8 zero-emission trucks that are moving freight on the roads today. So how do we get this job done, everyone? Today's discussion objectives will focus on the actions and collaboration needed to accelerate a transition to zero-emission freight, to ensure that all global commercial vehicle sales are truly zero-emission by 2040, that our actions align with the Paris Agreement commitments, and as we challenge others to raise their ambitions, that we empower diversity. And we make sure that no one is left behind. Joining us this afternoon, we have 5 powerful and distinguished women that are leading this transformation and include representatives of government, industry, and the nonprofit sector, all who are actively engaged in decarbonizing road freight. But before I introduce them to you, I would love to invite Minister Trudy Harrison, who is the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State at the UK Department for Transport, to deliver her opening address.
Thank you. And yes, it really has been fantastic. What a wonderful transport day we are having at COP26. It's my absolute pleasure to speak to you. It's been an incredible conference so far, and you can really feel the energy everywhere. It's the collective determination to make sure that this is a significant moment in time when the world answered the call to act. And we secured ambitious global targets to keep 1.5 degrees within reach. And how amazing it is to be here amongst such a strong female representation, ladies talking about freight. Come on. Not just because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, let's give these ladies an applause. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's crucial to meeting some of the biggest challenges of our time, including the decarbonisation of transport. Because diversity goes far beyond representation and must also include the diversity of thought. We need innovative ideas and fresh perspectives. It helps us to attract the most ambitious, young and diverse range of people who will help us to consider the complex challenges we face in a different way. Now, it feels right now that this is the year, and the UK is hosting COP26. 2021 has been a year like no other for the future of all transport in the UK. In July, we published the world's first transport decarbonisation plan. I really should know that, having said it so many times today. Setting out how we will reduce emissions and forge a realistic pathway to net zero by 2050 across all areas of our transport system. And with transport responsible for 27% of domestic emissions in the UK, this plan is a game changer. It's extensive and it's ambitious, and leaves no stone unturned, from the largest, heaviest lorry to the smallest, fastest ferry. It recognises the importance of transport, not just to get around, but to get on in life. It's something that fundamentally shapes our towns, our cities, our countryside, our living standards, our health, our whole quality of life. It can shape all of these things for good or for bad. And the decarbonisation of transport is how we will make sure that transport shapes the country and the economy in ways that are good for the long term. It's about making sure that the air we breathe is less polluted. It's about a second green industrial revolution, creating hundreds of thousands of new skilled jobs. And it's about creating a healthier and higher quality of life for everyone. Alongside the Transport Decarbonisation Plan, and then the more recent Net Zero Strategy, which is the most comprehensive plan in the world for how, as a country, we will meet our legally binding net zero targets, we made 2 very important announcements. Firstly, a zero-emission vehicle mandate to deliver our end-of-sale dates for new petrol and diesel-powered cars and vans by 2030. And secondly, a consultation on phasing out new non-zero emission HGVs by 2040. And I'm delighted that our domestic ambition is today being matched by international action, with the unveiling of the Global Memorandum of Understanding on phasing out new non-zero emission HGVs internationally by 2040. I'm confident our freight sector will adapt. Since coming into my role as a new minister, I've been amazed by the resilience, its ability to keep the country going, our medicines delivered, food on our shelves, and setting up and planning of major events like this. It simply could not happen without the huge involvement of road freight. The UK's road freight system is one of the most efficient in the world, contributing at least 13.6 billion to the UK economy each year. But it also contributes to harmful emissions, making up 16% of our domestic transport's annual greenhouse gas emissions and a main source of roadside nitrogen oxides that are harmful to human health. After cars and vans, lorries are the largest contributor to domestic transport carbon emissions in the UK, which is why zero-emission heavy goods vehicles are essential, not a nice-to-have. It's why I'm delighted to announce that today, following extensive engagement and consultation, the UK will be the first country in the world to commit to phasing out new non-zero emission heavy goods vehicles weighing 26 tonnes and under by 2035, and that all new trucks sold in the UK will be zero emission by 2040. These dates are ambitious, but they're also feasible. However, in recognition of the complexity of heavy goods vehicle use cases, we will work with industry to identify suitable derogations for vehicles below 26 tonnes that may need that further time to transition. To support industry with this transition, we've invested £20 million this year to design trials and develop the refuelling infrastructure that will be needed to support pioneering zero-emission HGV technology onto UK roads. And starting next year, we will expand these to demonstrate zero-emission HGV technologies at scale to quantify their operational benefits, as well as determining their specific infrastructure needs. These trials will advance research and development in battery electric HGVs, hydrogen fuel cell, and electric road systems. It's amazing to know that new battery electric heavy goods vehicles built right here in the UK by Leyland DAF will start running on UK roads soon, delivering supplies for all our NHS and others. That vehicle is here today, so please do go and see it. I can speak from personal experience, having driven the Leyland DAF LF 19-tonne truck around the Leyland estate in Preston just a couple of weeks ago, and it was incredibly smooth and responsive. I was certainly considering a second career in truck driving. So the technology is here. 14 years before the first major phase-out date for heavy goods vehicles in this country. I know there are challenges ahead, but we have time and we are well on track. There is no doubt in my mind that working together, we can accomplish this. We're not only proving that the technology works and that it can save businesses money, but also that it can create and secure skilled jobs and investment right across the globe. We don't pretend to have all the answers, far from it, which is why I cannot wait to get into the panel discussion with these wonderful women, inspiring people to hear firsthand about how we can work together to achieve net zero and secure a cleaner, greener, and more prosperous future for us all. Thank you.
Wow, that is incredible, and thank you for those wonderful opening remarks. A phase out 2035 for 26,000 tons and lighter. That is awesome.
26 tons.
26 tons. Yes, thank you. Remarkable. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for certainly starting with some inspiration for this great panel discussion that we're about to get in. All right, well, I would love to introduce the rest of the panel, but first let me go ahead and complete my wonderful introduction for Minister Harrison, who you've just heard from. Harrison is the Parliamentary Undersecretary of the State for the UK Department of Transport, a position she took back in September. The minister's responsibilities include the decarbonization of transport and the environment. Minister Harrison has served as Conservative MP for the Northern constituency of Copeland since 2017. It is great to have you here. Thank you. Next, we have Mary Nichols, my fellow Californian, who is a co-chair of Commission of Future of Mobility and vice chair of the California-China Climate Institute. Mary has worked in the environmental law field for 45 years and is the former chair of the California Air Resources Board. While serving as chair, Mary led the board in crafting California's international recognized climate action plan. It is great to have you here with us. Thank you, Mary. All right, to Mary's right, we have Cynthia Williams. Cynthia is the Global Director for Sustainability, Homologation, and Compliance at the Ford Motor Company, one of the world's best-known automotive manufacturers. Cynthia is responsible for Ford's sustainable business plans and 16 policies, environmental negotiations with regulatory bodies globally, and reporting on the company's environmental performance. Oh my gosh, you have so much to do. Thank you for being here with us, Cynthia. Next to Cynthia, we have Angela Holtberg. Angela is Head of Sustainability Mobility at the IKEA Group. Angela's job is to ensure that everything IKEA moves, whether it is goods, customers, or the 170,000 employees, it is done so sustainably, supporting their goal of being carbon negative by 2030. Angela was also the road transport lead for the Climate Champions team, connecting government, businesses, and investors ahead of COP26. Angela, wonderful to have you here. Thank you. All right, and then seated to the far left is Rachel Muncriff, who is the Deputy Director for the International Council for Clean Transportation, working to develop and implement program strategies to eliminate the climate and health impacts of the transportation sector. Rachel previously oversaw ICCT's heavy-duty vehicle program, and she holds a PhD in chemical engineering compliance and enforcement. Rachel, great to have you with us. All right, so let's drive action, ladies, and let's get started. As a moderator, I have the tough job of keeping us on time, so we're going to try to keep responses to 2 minutes. Just a little housekeeping. When you want to speak, push the button on the mic, and that should work for you. All right, so we're going to start off with government policy. We know effective government policy is key to accelerating the transition to zero-emission road freight. Mary, as the former chair of the California Air Resources Board, you led the charge to ensure that every new truck sold in California would be zero-emission by 2045. What regulation and incentives did California support to move this forward?
Is this working? Yes. Can you all hear me? Great, thank you. I was told, oh yes, this is lighted too, great. We have learned a thing or two over the years in California about how to use policy and standards to accelerate the technology revolution that's needed. Freight is frankly more complicated. The whole heavy-duty sector is not anywhere nearly as simple as passenger cars because these vehicles are directly used in commerce and people make decisions about what to buy, not based on what's cool or good looking, but on how it serves their needs. And it really requires a whole ecosystem to support the transition that we're talking about. We began with trying to make sure that we were doing everything that we could in California to push for the development of the zero-emission vehicles in the first place. And we have looked at both battery electrics and also at fuel cell vehicles. So we are neutral in terms of what technology it is, as long as it fits with the definition of zero. And then we had to look at how you're going to actually get these vehicles into the marketplace, which requires a mix of both, frankly, mandates in certain cases for purchase of these vehicles, and also incentives. And you need a mix of both of those things, monetary incentives. We have invested funds that the state of California has accumulated as a result of our price on carbon to directly motivate entities, particularly at local government levels, nonprofits, et cetera, to demonstrate and use these vehicles, because we're talking in some instances about technologies that the workers are not that familiar with. But at the end of the day, I think we're beginning to see now a real uptake and the advantages of driving zero, as the minister indicated, become apparent once people have a chance to actually work with them. So it's very much of a virtuous circle once you start to get the new clean technologies out and people start to see that they can use them, and then you help make them affordable, and then you've got real change happening.
Well, and certainly California's hybrid and zero-emission truck voucher incentive project, which has provided hundreds of millions of dollars to support the advancement of medium and heavy-duty zero-emission and clean vehicle technologies, has really paved the way to move these technologies forward. So we're so thankful, Mary, for your leadership. Thank you so much. Well, Minister Harrison, you just outlined a number of incredible regulatory measures that the UK is adopting to ensure commercial vehicles are zero emission. New purchases are zero emission by 2040. What other policies are you considering to speed up this transition?
I think even in order to be confident with the announcement, the commitment that we've made to trucks less than 26 tonnes by 2035 and over 26 tonnes by 2040, we had to have some real life knowledge, work with industry. I've certainly gained so much from visiting truck manufacturers, and officials across my department have extensively communicated, had conversations, but I think most importantly, the trials that we've invested in have provided that real-life understanding of what difference the topography makes, the journey length makes, the use type makes, in order to have some understanding of whether that commitment to 2030 or 2035 would be possible. And we too are technology agnostic, so we're looking at battery, we're looking at hydrogen fuel cell, we're even looking at the catenary wires in some areas as well. We don't have all the answers, as I set out in my speech, but the trials that we have gained so much from have really given us the confidence to be able to be bold and ambitious today. And I hope that you can all learn from our trials and the real-life examples across the UK and you know, align with equally ambitious targets for your own countries, your own organisations. So from me, it's trials, real-life trials that we will continue to invest in, and many, many conversations with industry, drivers and companies, local authorities, to really understand what their challenges are for us best to help as government in their endeavours.
I love that. I think the demonstrations are key, the learnings that come away from those demonstrations, and the opportunity to share those learnings with others, and especially with our global partnership, how we can be replicating success is so critical. So thank you very much. All right, well, industry support is vital to ensure an efficient transition to zero-emission freight. But we're talking about a major transformation here in the automotive sector in the next 10 to 20 years, an industry that has relied on internal combustion engines for decades. So Cynthia, tell us, what is the Ford Motor Company investing to support this transition?
Thank you, Alycia. Ford is investing in a carbon neutrality strategy. I'll start with our strategy first. Our strategy, what it does is we're looking at not only our vehicles, we're looking at our manufacturing operations as well as our supply chain. And so when you look at the vehicles, we're looking at both heavy and light-duty vehicles. And in the heavy-duty sector, we're working with fleet customers to start. And so with fleet customers, we know that they really understand the total cost of ownership. And so what we've done, we've had various pilots with the fleet customers, understanding what services that they need in terms of whether they're, tracking the mileage of their drivers, or, just what are the routes that they go on. So we're gathering data just to understand, well, what's the exact amount, of travel that they need to take on their daily drive. And what we've done is we worked with them just to develop what battery size would be required for your 2B and 3 type vehicles. And so that was the goal of the launch of the e-Transit vehicle that's coming later this month and next year in Europe. So the goal, again, work directly with our fleet customers, invest in what they need now, and also longer term, we just also received a grant from the DOE in terms of with fuel cell electric vehicles. And so we believe also we will need fuel cell electric vehicles for your higher energy intense vehicles that are needed. Based on the work that's needed, it'll depend whether or not they can use a battery electric vehicle or if they need something more like a fuel cell. So we're investing in both, and we have several research projects going on with that as well. But we believe we have a role to play in terms of reducing emissions of the vehicles that we put on the road. Also working with suppliers, we also think we have a role to play there to help them as well transition to a zero emissions fleet. And so we're working through our 4 customer service divisions to understand, well, what's needed there as well. But again, we have a role to play, and we're here to help, and we're here to help accelerate the zero emissions future. So thank you.
Great, Cynthia, congratulations on that DOE award. And I think you're absolutely right, focusing on how we enable the end user. What resources and tools do we need to provide them with, the guidance, so that they can be successful in deploying those zero-emission vehicle technologies? Spot on. All right, well, Angela, I would like to pose the same question to you. IKEA makes millions of on-road deliveries a year. What investments is the IKEA Group making to support this transition?
Well, I think our journey really started with setting the target of 100% zero-emission home deliveries by 2025. So we said that in 2018, and now 2025 is actually just around the corner, right? And I think being a front runner means that you will run into every single hurdle there is. And we've done that for sure. We've had some great success. We've launched trucks in 20 countries. We're 100% in Paris, Amsterdam, Shanghai. We're 90% in China, actually, which is one of our biggest markets. So it's going well in some places, but it's also really hard. And what we've done is just that, actually. We've invested. So we've invested in leasing platforms so we can help buy the vehicles that we're not going to use. We're not a fleet owner. I should make that clear. I'm a purchaser of transport services. So we invested in leasing platforms so we can help buy the vehicles that our suppliers and their sub-suppliers need. That's one way of doing it. EV sharing platforms, charging platforms, platforms helping us get smarter in what we do as well. So there's a lot of investments we can make directly. And we had to completely rethink the business model of this. How do we work with OPEX? How do we work with CAPEX? What investments can we make? How is our role changing? And I think that's really what we've noticed now. We are far from only a purchaser of transport. There is no way we can get to 100% electric in 2025 by going to the transporters and saying, like, please, only electric. It's not going to work. We have to also bring something to the table. Look at contract lead times. Look at all of it. And so that's what we're doing. So we're actually investing, putting our money where our mouth is, and just finding the partners we need and the solutions we need to actually reach our targets. So we're very much investing in collaboration.
Angela, that's great. And thank you for being a partner, because we've learned so much from your experiences of taking that multidisciplinary approach. I think that is fantastic. So thank you. Thank you very much. All right, Rachel, over to you. The ICCT works to improve environmental performance and energy efficiency of transportation, including road freight. Research indicates that the most successful countries and regions adopt a combination of aggressive targets, strong regulations, and targeted and time-bound incentives. How can government and industry align to support a complete policy package of strong regulations and incentives to enable the transition to zero-emission road freight?
Thank you very much. I have to say, this is probably the coolest panel I've ever been on. When I was thinking what I wanted to talk about on this panel, I had to think back, because January 2022 will actually mark 20 years that I've been working in the freight sector. And I'm thinking back 20 years ago, and I remember, maybe some of you do as well, what the trucks on the road looked like back then, at least in the US where I'm from. They are super boxy. They have these giant smokestacks with constantly black soot coming out, spewing out. And fast forward 20 years, and now you look around, the trucks they're super sleek chassis, aerodynamic side skirts on the trailers. And if you see a truck that's putting out black smoke, you're going to notice it, because it's like very unusual. And so things have changed so much, and we've come a long way. And all of those changes I talked about, plus many more, were driven by regulation. If we didn't have regulations, we would still probably have those super polluting trucks on the road. So that's why, they're so important. And now I'm thinking future, like the next 20 years. Now we have an even bigger challenge ahead of us. We have to completely transition away from fossil fuel and completely transition to clean and renewable energy to power all of those trucks on the road. And it is going to be challenging. And I can pretty much, I think, guarantee that if we don't have super strong regulation, super strong collaborations like we're having here today, we're not going to be successful. But the good news is, and like we've been hearing from everyone, we're converging, and we know what those policies are. We know what has to get done. And I can list them right here. I mean, you have these phase-out dates that the UK is doing. These are super important. They send these giant signals, and they're really, really valuable. The regulations, of course, the zero-emission vehicle regulations that sort of mandate that the manufacturers have to sell these vehicles. The infrastructure. I think I've heard the word infrastructure about 400 times today. The governments not only have to, obviously, there can be some public investment in infrastructure, but they also have to put in place the incentives to ensure that the private sector is able to invest in the infrastructure. The fiscal incentives, they are expensive, but they're important as sort of a stopgap measure until we reach this cost parity that we will get to, sooner rather than later, hopefully. And then finally, I think it's really like the fleet purchase requirements that California is paving the way with as well, because that's going to make sure that you have the demand for those vehicles. So, I think all of those policies are the areas where we're working on and we want to collaborate with others on.
That's great. Thank you so much, Angela. I think you are, or Rachel, you are spot on. In California, we have big ambitions to move the drayage market to zero emissions. It is going to take collaboration, partnership, and certainly figuring out that infrastructure challenge is going to be critical in order to realize that zero emission vehicle adoption we want to see amongst the drayage market. So really good points. Thank you, Rachel. All right, so Angela, I want to bring this question over to you, and reflecting on your professional experience as head of sustainable mobility at IKEA, as well as your role as the COP26 climate champion, how can government and industry align to enable the transition to zero emission freight?
Okay, I'm going to start by making it 403. Infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. It is really crucial. But I think also what we need is consistency, and we need to think long term. These are huge investments, the life cycle of a vehicle, the development cycle of a vehicle. These are not quick fixes. And if we don't know that what you say today will remain after the next election, we'll be very hesitant, I think, to make those investments. So we need consistency. We need the direction. Be technology agnostic. Companies like Ford can figure out the technology better than most politicians, no offense. But say, this is the end result. We want long term. And then also alignment. Definitely within a country, because we don't always have that even. We have different zones in different cities. It's a nightmare for any fleet owner to drive when you have a different set of rules in 20 cities, right? But also across state borders. If we're talking Frieght, you know, it's going from one end of Europe to the other. It's going from Canada all the way to Mexico. We need alignment so we know what happened. And if we have that, and if we have the framework and we can depend on that framework, the investments, I'm sure, will come.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much. Alignment, when you're thinking about collaboration, making sure there's consistency and transparency across what the goals and objectives and the requirements are. Love it. Thank you so much, Angela. All right. So we know that in addition to the substantial climate and health benefits, the switch to zero-emission vehicles can create economic growth and provide new green jobs. Cynthia, over 200,000 employees worldwide. How does Ford intend to leverage the transition to zero-emission road freight to maximize infrastructure investments and clean technology jobs?
Thanks, Alycia. At Ford, you may have heard of some of the announcements that we just made in the U.S. We're building a new facility in Kentucky and Tennessee. And really, we're looking at this as an opportunity to grow our business. There, we're going to add about 11,000 jobs between the two sites. We're also rolling out training programs, in which we think is very, very important. So in Texas, we'll start in Texas. We're investing $90 million in training so that we can train for technicians and such to work on the vehicles. And that will expand from $90 million to $525 million across 5 years. And so we're investing in our people as well, because we don't want to leave anyone behind. Also, one of my things is I like to do is what I'm going to, I'm working to set up with my teams at Ford is going back into high schools, creating those skilled trades programs so that we can train folks so that they're ready for the next era of vehicles that are coming. Also working through colleges as well. Again, I think it's very important that we start young and we start with the youth. Also, I participate in a program on Saturdays with young girls, 9th through 12th grade, just to, just mentoring, helping them understand who they are, helping them understand what obstacles they need to overcome to be, to go to college and to be successful in life. But again, teaching them about electric vehicles, fuel cell vehicles, things of that sort. Again, starting early, I think, is what we need to do, and investing in the pipeline so that we do have technology leaders coming up in the future.
What a template to be shared. That is fantastic. I love even just hearing about empowering young girls and getting more women in this industry. And I actually have a question coming up on that, so we'll get there shortly. But thank you, Cynthia. That's fantastic. All right, well, Mary, over to you. You work to cut air pollution and greenhouse gases in a way that reduce the impact on frontline communities, created jobs, and supported economic growth. How can society leverage the transition to zero-emission road freight while leaving no one or community behind?
Well, first of all, the connection between environmental justice and transitioning to zero-emission freight is a no-brainer. There's no discrepancy between the two, because in our communities that experience the worst effects of multiple kinds of pollution, the single biggest source of toxic contaminants is diesel emissions from heavy freight. So cleaning up those vehicles and transitioning to zero is all about benefiting our communities that are the most stressed, that are facing the worst effects of pollution, and also contributing to our global warming goals at the same time, which is why we've had such tremendous political support at the local government and in the legislature, both levels, for investing in these rapid transition programs, because you can see the benefits very, very readily. It's all apparent. It's also true that communities, states compete for this business, where we as a state in California are at the forefront of the logistics movement in the United States. That is, our leading industry is not movies or music or even high tech. It is, in fact, moving things around. And so if we can transition and be on the front end of bringing on a whole new generation of vehicles that are able to maneuver in places that they are not as able to do anymore, to do today, we can speed up goods movement. We can bring in new technologies that help use the more state-of-the-art information sharing, data sharing, to get goods where they need to go faster and more efficiently. And that type of transition is really made possible by having electrified vehicles as well. So while you're transitioning to a vehicle that has zero emissions, you're also bringing on all kinds of computer technologies that are useful in making sure that you're moving goods around in a more efficient and responsive way as well. So this is one of those situations where doing well for the environment really also is an important investment in economic development as well.
Great, Mary, thank you so much. And I think, as we think about collaboration and the importance of bringing your partners around you, communities have to have a seat at the table.
Yes, I also really like the idea of the after-school programs and weekend programs for girls, where they're talking about electric transportation instead of what they did when I was that age, which was, sewing and cooking. I think we've come a long way.
We sure have. Oh, well, thank you very much. Appreciate those good remarks. I have to say that this is quite an honor for me to have the opportunity to moderate such an esteemed panel of women that I look up to and that I am greatly inspired by. And I want to talk now about how do we get more amazing, awesome women in the industry, and how do we promote diversity. So I want to bring this conversation to start with Rachel. So how can we, as government, industry, and the nonprofit sector, encourage more women and people of diverse backgrounds to join the freight industry? What can we learn from your experience in this sector?
Thank you. This is obviously something that I think we're probably all very passionate about up here. I do think that there's actually a lot of women who are interested in joining and who are in the industry. And one issue that I sort of wanted to highlight is when you look at companies and you look at organizations and you look at the more junior staff and you look at the number of women and the number of minorities, the fraction in those positions, and then you look at the higher levels within the organization and the number of women and the number of minorities, the fraction in positions and higher levels in those companies, there's a huge disparity. And I think, that's an issue that we can focus on, and there's a lot of stuff that we can do about that. This is a systemic problem. And I think it's just, in a way, like similar to the transition away from fossil fuels. We know it's the right thing to do, but it's not going to happen on our own. We have to be very deliberate about it. And I can just share with you guys, even within the ICCT, I mean, we're a very, obviously, like, progressive, nonprofit research organization. Over the last couple of years, we took a really close look at our hiring practices, at our compensation and benefits practices, and at, like, how we go about it in terms of promotions and advancements. And we actually found a lot of areas where we can make improvements, and we have. Now we have about 30% women in our senior leadership, and our board of directors is 50% women. So it's good progress, but we have a lot more to go. And we've recently decided, JEDI issues, that's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, which I love that terminology. That's going to be like a core pillar of our organization, not just on the institutional side, but also making sure that it's super, super integrated into the work that we do because it's so relevant. And I would just tell any company and any organization, if you have not taken a close look at what you're doing, there's probably a lot of room for improvement, and you really should do it. And there's lots of actually, like, professionals out there that can help you if you haven't done it yet, so.
Yes, and being intentional, you're absolutely right. And then evaluating and looking at what your makeup of your team or the organizations that you're working with and how you can empower and how you can support and promote. And JEDI, I also really love that term as well. So thank you so much, Rachel. Appreciate your remarks. All right, so Minister Harrison, a similar question over to you. How can we improve diversity and promote more inclusive behaviors across the freight sector? Is there anything from your experience that you can share with us?
Yes, the difficulty here is keeping my comments within 2 minutes because actually I think most of my experience in this comes from being the very happy mum of Gabrielle, Savannah, Francesca and Rosemary, who are my 4 daughters aged between 18 and 23. But not ever did I hear of my girls talking about a future in freight, despite one of my daughters, Savannah, training in electrical energy as an electrical engineer. So I do think it starts with parents. I think it starts with aunties and uncles and grandmas and granddads and next door neighbours and teachers to inspire about all the variety of careers, not just heavy goods vehicle drivers, but especially as we're transitioning electricians and people to work across the manufacturing and all sectors within freight is so important. So we all have a huge role to play in society to inspire the next generation, but particularly girls and young women. And then working with the Department for Education to make sure that we're encouraging women in particular to think about these careers. Skills fairs, jobs fairs, making sure we're talking about apprenticeships and qualifications that can lead to good, well-paid, highly skilled jobs in freight. I think it's so important, and I think really the light has been shone so brightly on the freight sector because of the challenges we've had, but also the recognition that during the pandemic, we all depended on freight for food, for medicines, for PPE. It never stopped. And now this is the new green industrial revolution where freight becomes clean and green. And from my perspective, driving that truck in Leyland, I really appreciated that it wasn't heavy mechanics anymore. It was responsive, it was smooth steering, it was a joy to drive. And absolutely perfectly possible for women to drive trucks, just like Becky, who is a young woman, a truck driver, who has took to TikTok in order to inspire other women to follow her career path. I think we just need to be enthusiastic, and I'm clearly enthusiastic about this. But I think one of the great things that we must continue to do is welcome all female panelists talking about freight in every country across the world, because I think we'll learn from example, and having these women being a wonderful, shining example of freight today. So thank you, Alycia, and thank you for your enthusiasm, because you've really stimulated a brilliant conversation thus far.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Thank you very much. Well, I don't know how I would be able to top that. That was all wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes. I would love to get Cynthia, your perspective on this, and I might ask you to, if you can keep it to a minute, because I'm going to have to close out soon.
Absolutely.
But I would love to hear your perspective.
I'll just give you my story. So I grew up in Flint, Michigan, and I was part of Flint, Michigan's first pre-engineering program for young grade. I think I was in 8th grade when I started the pre-engineering program. So working with communities to establish programs like that, the program was designed to bring in young ladies and minorities into engineering. 30 years later, I'm an engineer, been an engineer at Ford Motor Company for that long. So again, programs through communities, educating girls, starting early, those are all things that will get folks interested and bring them into the field early.
Great. Thank you for sharing your experience with us, Cynthia. I think you're amazing, and you certainly inspire me. So thank you so much. We could have had a whole session on that question alone. But now we're coming to an end, and I just want to say what a brilliant discussion. Thank you so much, ladies. You have given us wisdom and guidance on how to move this critical transformation forward together. It is clear that there is a lot of work that needs to be done, but it's exciting to hear about the great progress we've already made and some of the actions government and business can take right now to reduce carbon emissions from the road freight sector. To the audience and those watching from your online virtual offices or at home, I hope you are inspired and encouraged by this conversation and have come away with ideas about what further action we can take and the opportunities that zero-emission commercial vehicles can bring us. And governments, I urge you to join the 15 countries across all 17 continents of diverse backgrounds to sign the Memorandum of Understanding and commit to that zero-emission commercial vehicle adoption goals so that we can speed up this transformation that we need to really meet the climate reduction goals so that we can see that net zero carbon emissions by 2050 and create a cleaner and more prosperous planet for all of us. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ladies.